Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indiana Arts Homecoming. My name is Rachel Wilkin, and I am a member of the Homecoming Steering Committee. I am pleased to welcome you to How Can We Inspire Creativity in the Communities We Serve? Today's session will be led by Desiree Simpson. Before I turn it over to Desiree, I am just going to go over a few things. Please remain muted during the presentation until the Q&A so we can give our full attention to today's presenter. Feel free to utilize the chat function to introduce yourself and ask questions throughout the session. If you would like to rename yourself in Zoom, you can do so by hovering over your image, clicking the three dots and selecting rename. Captioning is also available during the session and throughout the conference. You can turn those on by clicking the closed caption button in the bottom navigation bar. If you have any questions or tech issues throughout the session, please feel free to send our tech host a direct message in the chat. And with that, I am turning it over to Desiree to get started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending and for being part of this wonderful opportunity to share our creativity and learn from one another. I'm going to, let's see how I can get back to the slides. There we are. Okay, as you can see, we have the, we're going to be talking about how we can inspire creativity in the communities we serve. And as we talk about this, I want to go to the next screen, please. I don't know if many of you are teachers, many of you perhaps are, but I am a teacher, educator, art educator, and over the past year and a half, I've been teaching from, as you can see in the slide here, teaching in Zoom. To break the monotony, there were times when I would take children on a visual journey with camera to other places so that we could break that consistent view of just one person behind the camera, another in front of the camera, or me looking at squares of children in the screen. So it just became a little bit hectic. Just to give you a little bit more about my background, I'm an artist, designer, and educator, and I founded the studio in 2007, located in Gary, Indiana. And I've traveled extensively, studied abroad, but what really brought this home to me was spending some time in the Dominican Republic as a Peace Corps volunteer and working with artisans there. And I saw how so many of the artisans, though they were from poor country, they were able to use their artistry to uplift themselves in some way, to make a brighter future for themselves. And I wanted to bring a similar model to the United States, particularly working with children and youth. Although the initial objective was to work in low-income communities, it has somewhat shifted to now just working with communities in general who are interested in bringing a flavor of art and creativity into their communities. For a time, I've worked primarily with children who were in foster care. I've worked with senior citizens. I've worked with individuals who were wards of the state and on probation, all with the idea of using art to in some way inspire a better existence, a better way of life, but in some ways to also use art as therapy. And for so many, during the time of COVID, particularly from 2019, I want to say the spring through the summer of this year, so many individuals have had an opportunity to touch on art as a vehicle for helping to break the monotony of isolation, of trying to feel their creative juices in some way, whether it was with music, painting, gardening. Um, Many just tried new approaches to finding their interest. Okay, I have a question about moving the closed caption. I will see if that will work. Hope that works. Thank you for that. If we can go back to the next slide. Next slide, please. Wanted to ask, how have you been inspired? How has your creativity been inspired in a way that you could, you've inspired creativity in your community? And if so, what were your goals? What was your intention? And if you have any responses, you can put those in the chat box and I'll read a few. Okay. Okay. Still have some coming in. So how have you inspired creativity in your community? What have you done? And when I talk about community, I'm not just talking about the city at large and a neighborhood, a village, but it can be within an institution. It could be a community within some other entity, could be a school community, could be a neighborhood community, could be an ecumenical community, could be a club or organizational community. Your community is the space where you find some safety, some camaraderie, some form of community with other individuals, and you make that space how you see fit for its purpose, for its intended purpose. Okay. Okay. Chapin says, when I was still teaching, we would invite the community to our Fine Arts Academy to create group artworks, murals, etc. Okay, great. So making murals can be a way. I have here, what I'm sharing on this screen is in fact a mural with a school I worked with in Chicago. And I was approached by, at the time I was working with a small nonprofit, and they were an arts organization in the Chicagoland area, and asked if I would come in to teach them how to do mosaics. This is a school that's predominantly Mexican and African American, and they wanted to portray how the various ethnic groups who attended their schools migrated to the Chicagoland area. So over a year, well, let me backtrack. For a few weeks, I worked with the art teacher, social studies teacher, math teacher, as a small community of teachers in the school to help train them on how to realize this mosaic mural inside of their school community. And what they did is they floated various ideas of what types of scenes, what imagery they wanted to create. And that was fine and well, but I worked with them on the application and how do you put this particular image on a vertical wall. And so they came up with images, and in fact, though it doesn't show as well from this distance, it's a combination of mosaic tile as well as collaged images with varying degrees. As you can see, Umoja, which is Swahili, representing the African American groups in the school, but also the Mexican, the indigenous groups as well. And you can just see how they played with background pattern images collaged in, and in some instances they even have small toys. I can't see them now, but when they had little cars or trucks showing how some drove from Mexico to Chicago. You can see images of perhaps photographs of individuals who've come here, the faces of maybe some known individuals, others who came here through the waterways, and noted artists such as Stevie Wonder here. I think there may be Malcolm X, else? Just a variety of figures who they, and I think a piano here to show how the music, I think there are guitars further to the right in the mural. But this was a way of, inspired by the art teacher who felt that this encompassed everyone, the history of a city, to help children understand how individuals come, where they come from, and how it's so important that we get along, how we learn to appreciate one another, and our historical background were all important. Okay, I have a few more pieces here in the chat. Okay, I encourage children in elementary schools to tell their own stories. Excellent. Having discussions about what types of interactions communities want and how we can make them happen by working together. The conversation can be anywhere at any time. Absolutely. We have hosted quarterly art galleries. Great. We've provided free woodworking projects. Oh, wonderful. And community, and use these to encourage children and adults to use their own imagination when painting and what they will use them for. And when I was teaching in East Chicago, I started a small knit and crochet club. Wonderful. I ended up with 6 students who learned to do basic crochet stitches, mostly 3rd to 5th grade students. Fantastic. Those interlacing skills are skills that we don't use typically in elementary school. Perhaps in high school, if there's a weaving program, but seldom do we see it in elementary schools. I use part of this program to be a mentoring experience where the older students help the younger students in a hands-on way. It was sweet, and the kids were always super proud of their mini baskets. Oh, wonderful. I love basket making. At the Carnegie Museum, we encourage students and participants of all ages to attend Market Day and provide materials for projects that reflect the maker's work, Maker's Day. Okay. And thank you, Tony, Natalie, Dave, Ryan, and Barbara from Barbara Vincent. I help people in my community to paint murals. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So murals can tell stories, can provide discussions about interactions, about different groups, about different communities or groups in our community, holding or hosting quarterly art galleries. And the art galleries can be a combination or culmination of works from anyone in your community, where you base or identify your community to be. Woodworking projects, woodcrafts, wonderful, knit and crochet club. attending Maker's Day, wonderful. Creating books from recycled materials is another. Um, when I taught outreach at near East Side in Indy, I worked with third, fifth graders, learn to make books from recycled materials, tell their own stories. Thank you, Tony, for sharing that. Okay, I love these ideas. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. So some ways of inspiring creativity in the communities we serve can be through gardening, creating garden art, throwing pots, murals, community furniture, community sculptures, repurposing materials, any type of environmental art, and anything outside could be environmental art. Partnering with others and forming creative groups and more. What I wanted to provide you with at Live Art Studio, we have a philosophy that includes 13 principles, and they define our program's approach, and also emphasizes the values and characteristics and fundamentals and characteristics fundamental to our instructional style. What I did is I pulled out 5 of those values, and I attached characteristics to them to help fit better our purpose today of inspiring creativity in the communities we serve. And so let me go to this chat, please. Okay, and C. Klemperer, I hope I said that correctly. I work with prisoners on parole with the program dealing with emotions and finding creative ways to express them. Wonderful, wonderful. Art therapy is definitely so much a part of what we're talking about because it can be therapeutic. Purpose, what is your intended goal? And so when approaching these types of activities and creative projects, it's best to have an intended goal. Process, what is your approach? How do you plan to make it happen? And product, what do you plan to do or make? And planning goes together with both process and product. Ideally, with our therapy, the product is not important. It's the process in making it. However, if you're not doing an art therapy approach, the product can be important depending upon what your purpose is. So those dynamics run together, but the idea here is to be guided more so by the purpose. In partnerships, who's involved in a meaningful way. In the last example I shared, there were 3 teachers. Normally in schools, art teachers kind of are by themselves, and history or social studies and math, everyone's kind of in their own world. But whether it's a school or a larger community, getting others involved in a meaningful way who you may think have absolutely nothing to do with it is important. And then pride, what's the personal and communal admiration? When that's established, then others kind of gravitate and we'll be looking for more to come from you and what you're doing. Okay, next slide, please. Reading chairs. I wanted to share a brief bit about some of the projects that I've had an opportunity to work on, and this was in a high school community in which we were given chairs from the stockade of old furniture in the school storage facility. And the objective was to create reading chairs to inspire literacy. And the reading chairs were going to be created, designed, worked on by high school students and would be made for elementary, kindergarten through third grade students. Next slide, please. I worked with, well, to be honest, I was asked to work with one or two students, but I said that's not the case. I would like to get as many students as I can involved. I worked with about 60 plus students, and I had each student work with a partner. Some partners were friends, others really didn't know each other, but the objective was to work as a team so that we could do a good job. And I wanted as many students to learn as possible. What I'm sharing here are the different types of paints and products we had to use. We used paints that were incompatible. Theoretically would be incompatible. Oils and watercolors don't typically mix, but even though I know that as an art instructor, I would commonly tell students, don't mix these paints together. Well, they didn't listen. They didn't listen, created their own type of paints, and it worked out well. Next slide, please. In part of the process, it required the students to strip down the furniture to its bare wood, and that meant spending time sanding. I thought at the onset that it would be a great idea to use a power sander, but I was wrong. It picked up too much dust and it just wasn't worth the trouble. So because we had lots of windows, everyone was given a small piece of sandpaper, and they spent 2 or 3 days just sanding. And we went down from one grade to a finer, next to a even more finer grade, just to get the skill and knowledge of working with wood and feeling texture and knowing when something was ready to move on to the next stage. They also had to clean the chair. They had to treat this chair like it was a child. They really had to care for it in a way. They had to break it down, if you will, to its most primitive state. The next part of the process, since these were reading chairs, each chair worked in tandem with a book or a learning concept for children between kindergarten and third grade. And so in the next frame you see here, you see a small group of students. Only 2 worked on this chair together, but 4 are so engaged in what the 2 are doing that they're just looking on. So what they had to do was to read the children's book and discuss and talk about what parts of the book, the imagery, would work well on their chair so that they could design a piece of the chair that really spoke to the book. Next slide, please. And in this particular one, this is a snowy day. And so this young lady, these 2 ladies worked on a snowy day chair. And so they had to figure out how best to apply the paint, how to, in fact, we use spray paint, as you saw a couple of slides before. We use spray paint for the metal portion. We fortunately had spray booths. So I literally showed them how to use spray, how to pivot the wrist and arm. They wore, of course, masks, and it was 100% safe. I had rubber gloves for them, and different techniques of using tape around the tubular portion of the chair to achieve different motifs. And so she's sharing the part of a book and a page that she thought was compelling and what she actually used on the chair. Next slide, please. And here we have just a variety. There were books about counting money. So a student, she's modeling her money chair. Another student worked on Pippi Longstocking, and then there were a couple of boys who wanted to do Michael Jordan. And so they worked on these chairs, but also they had to read the books, learn something about, for the example, Michael Jordan, they read a children's book about his backstory to help really empower their creative energy. Next slide, please. And here you can see some of the chairs. Now, we didn't do all of these. We did most of the chairs. We did about 35 chairs. And you can see where the books are in relation to the chairs, where they easy know. This took us about 3 months to do. And oftentimes, as with children, youngsters, I should say, these young adults, teenagers, they would start and paint over it. Oh, I don't like it. I will do it another way. Start, paint over it. Oh, I think I want to do it this way. And so that's part of the process, going through, I don't like it, me encouraging them, but them deciding, well, I appreciate it, but I think I want to go in a different direction. And so at the grand opening, all the chairs were exhibited, and teachers, reading instructors, librarians, thank you for those. I appreciate your sentiments regarding this project. Librarians came out on this day, and I think they had an auction for the chairs. The chairs were then placed in various, and I think most of the elementary schools, or those who at least bidded on them and had elementary school age children, and they were placed in their reading rooms. Some went to libraries. There were even a few administrators who wanted chairs in their offices. I can imagine that. And for those instances, we were able to do a couple of adult-sized chairs for those individuals. Oh, thank you, Dave. I love this, says Dave. Deanna, I love this too. I love every step of this project, encouraging them to reread children's books and to consider the relationship between text and image on top of all the process lessons. Yes, Natalie, hospice sometimes has charity affair. We did that one year. Artists paint chairs for their benefits. Yes. And a part of this is also, we wanted these chairs to be durable. So after they learned how to break them down, they also had to build them back up. And I photographed each day the children working on these chairs. And each day I played a loop video of PowerPoint slides so that they could see their progress. So they literally saw the chairs when they first came in, dirty, damaged, to on their way to the auction block, and saw how beautiful they were. They applied the, what do you call it? The polyurethane, so that the material, the paint was set. And though it doesn't show here, we use rubber bottoms that you might typically find on crutches, so that the bottoms would not mar the floor. So we tried to take into consideration a variety of things regarding safety and comfort, and also sound. Next slide, please. Hey, in this smaller project, it's just repurposing cardboard boxes and building sculptures with them. And in this, I just cut boxes up, and for children, especially elementary school age children, grades first and kindergarten, first and second, this is a project in which you can literally cut up your old boxes. And I put slits on the sides. As you can see, some of those slits are cut, and I used a box cutter. I did not use scissors for this cardboard. There are many, many pieces. I would have the children then use construction paper crayons, because they resonate much more deeply in terms of color richness on cardboard, and let them put them together to create a sculpture for themselves. In a particular project that I worked with, the children made centerpieces at their lunch tables so that they could appreciate eating together. It's all about community, remember. And in one school, 2 students worked on one centerpiece, and they could turn it, uh, look at it from different angles, but they all had an opportunity to add some type of detail or design to it. This would be a project that might cost you literally nothing if you have old boxes around. Next slide, please. Gardening project involves working with wood. However, I know now some of you are saying, oh, the cost of wood has really skyrocketed, and indeed it has. But using old crates, pallets can be deconstructed and repurposed. And these are garden boxes that were made at a public school in Chicago. And of course, as you can see, they're growing tomatoes, greens, and such. Okay, thank you, Dave. Dave says he's done this at a group home using reclaimed lumber as well. And Natalie from South Shore says, oh, lumber companies love to give grants and supplies. Yes, we were able to get some wood. I don't know, we did not ask during the pandemic because the prices were just skyrocketing, but that's always an opportunity to encourage others by having your plan and others really supporting you with it. Next slide, please. And this is more garden art. Now, for those who crochet and sew and knit, on the left, you have a tree that's literally been wrapped in crocheted, knitted, woven material. It's been wrapped. And I thought that was just so beautiful. On the right is reclaimed pieces of wood that have been cut and organized in a way to create garden art. And then a little mushroom here made out of paper mache. Now, what they're sticking in the ground with is iron from an iron worker. I was able to commandeer his services before taking welding class so that I could then make my own armatures for these such sculptures. But they include the green wood, plywood, pine wood, polyurethane, molded flowers and bottle tops and such applied to it. So just things that you might want to consider in terms of putting in your garden and developing more environmental projects with groups. Okay, next slide. And then building benches. This was just one bench, and in the back on the slide on the right, you can see a big planter box that we did at the studio. And the bench was donated to a blind, it's a blind social club, and they wanted a bench for their sound garden. And so these are the young men working on the bench. They really enjoyed sanding. They couldn't sand enough. I mean, the pride they took in how smooth they got that wood just really blew me away. But it was a wonderful experience. They gained some knowledge, some skills, and really enjoyed the projects. Learning to use the tools, materials, a great experience. Next slide, please. And outdoor sculptures. Now, these are not mine. These are some that were found online because mine were I was not able to convert them over to this platform. But downtown Chicago students have used the street lamps to hang paper mache um, uh, insects and bugs that they can imagine and create themselves using forms perhaps of balloons, newspaper, cardboard, and painted with a durable coating for weather resistance. These are wonderful types of projects to use and can be made over a period of time that can enhance anyone's outdoor place or any venue, perhaps an approach or walkway or an open space, perhaps a garden area that you're considering growing plants or vegetables in, to really spruce it up with something visually appealing. And I think was just a great idea. And these were on site downtown on Wabash near the Art Institute for just, I think, one semester or so. Next slide, please. And then the mask making project. These masks were done in a variety of ways. I'm showing how two children are working together to apply the mask making material to the face. And before doing this, of course, we gave demonstrations with the adults, and then the children just bought right in. They took the time to do it carefully, used the application of Vaseline, and it really does help build trust. Now, we did this in an elementary school, but we also did it with our group of students who were in foster care and who were awards of the state. And I wasn't sure, particularly the latter group would be as compelled to want to put that on their faces, but they did. Not all of them did, but a few did. And I was really impressed by how well they worked together, the trust and rapport that came as a result of them working as they did, and just the overall camaraderie that was built as they moved through the process. And on the right are some of the others. We also had available molds if they preferred to work with molds. We shared with them how to use newspaper to create a face with its features. And then, of course, they could use one another as the form. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Stepping stones. This can be another added project or an idea for a project in your garden. And this was a one-day, two or 3 hour workshop that we did with a fun family program. And we simply used hydraulic cement and had them to add whatever type of material they wanted to. It was something that they could make. It dried rapidly. It was very strong. And so within the time that they were there for the 2 hours, by the time they were ready to go, it was dry. We gave them a paper bag to put it in. But it was really an opportunity for children to get to mix something and put into a space that they would visit every day. Next slide, please. And then a community gallery. This in fact happened this past summer, in which we worked with, I think it was about 80 students who came all together from different places to attend a summer camp after a year of not having camp. This was a 2-week-long camp in which they did a variety of mosaic not plaques, but heat pot warmers, um, trivets, and they did used a variety of other drawing materials from kindergarten through 8th grade. And so this is a display of their work at the culminating event. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for coming. Next slide, please. And then finally, the Peace Paper Project. I had a chance to be a part of this recently, and I'm a veteran. I served in the Army Reserves from 92 to 2009, and stations just outside of Chicago in Darien, Illinois at the 416th Engineers Command Headquarters. Engineer Command for the Corps of Engineers Reserve component. Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Deanna. You're welcome. And what I did, what we're asked to do was for those who are dealing with trauma, is to take your uniforms. We took our uniforms and cut them up into about the size of a stamp. I took a pair of my uniform pants, which you see in the first slide to your left, and then we pulped them in a kind of like a giant vat / blender, and until they're just like pulp, like oatmeal. And then we use screens, as you can see in the next slide. This is a gentleman, he's doing a Marine uniform, green. And we have different branches of the service who came, many individuals from different branches, Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, Army, Marines. Each selected a uniform, could have been their white shirts, their dress blacks or blues, and we pulped them. And in the lower section, you can see here where they are hung, and we squeeze them in a huge press. And then finally we make paper. The paper is 100% pure. It doesn't have chemicals in it or additives. And the colors that you see are the colors from the uniforms themselves. Now you might be asking, well, I'm not a vet. This, it doesn't have to be about veterans. But, oh, thank you, Tony, for sharing. You did. Tony says, I did this with my grandfather's Korean War field jacket and created a large amount of work about memory. So glad to hear this is continuing. Combat paper, peace paper, and any other name it goes by. Yes, Peace Paper Project. This is also for those who might have been experiencing any sexual trauma, any type of trauma. Perhaps you have some experience in your life, your background, or you work with individuals who've experienced some type of trauma. This is a wonderful project to take the trauma-related items, those that cause so much pain, to deconstruct it, to cut it up, tear it up, change it, and now make it into something beautiful. This paper can be used to make books. You can write your thoughts in here, write poetry, write your memories in these books. Perhaps a card, you can send a note to someone you care about, perhaps someone to whom you want to apologize. But the significance of a project such as this has just can go a long way and can be charged with so much. This project is also used with those who are refugees and who've experienced homelessness in their journey to find a home. And when the refugees could no longer wear their clothes because they were rags, they were then gone through the same process, and they learned to make paper. In some countries, this is done all over the world. In some countries, they've become the master paper makers for the government and in their towns and villages, thus creating a revenue stream for which there's a need. Where we can go out and buy paper. These specialty papers have great significance in other parts of the world, and may not even be specialty, because once you master the process to such a degree, you can get the paper to look like perhaps parchment or even finer. There are various recipes that can be used to do this. And the Peace Paper Project, by the way, is on YouTube and on the various, on their own website. So I thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you. And I'm going to take some questions now. Oh, Tony asked, do I have a fiber beater? I don't have one, but the individual who facilitated the process, he brought a portable one, which he had built. Okay. Any questions? If you'd like to ask any questions, you may place them in the chat. Oh, Tony said, this is how we tackled that expensive problem. Yes, you can use your blender, but I cannot attest to how fine it would beat the fibers down to a pulp. The fiber beater does it in about 20 minutes. Yeah. If you had an old washer and really shredded it for 5 to 10 times, it can become pulp. It could be. I have not experimented with it. However, the gentleman who facilitates the paper project has YouTube videos, and he will show you how to do it, give you alternatives as to what you can do in your community to realize this project. Okay. Okay. How would you suggest community members, artists initiate relationships to begin these types of projects? I would just share that a lot of times it's by, for us, it has been largely word of mouth. When individuals see what we've done, they want to see more of it, and they will call us to come and facilitate different projects with their groups within their communities. Doing public works there certainly does give you an eye from the public. And when so many people are watching you and looking at you, you then create an audience for yourself, whereby that audience may want to see more of what you can do. And being able to really have your process planned out, having a goal for what you're doing, and it really resonating within that community, and then that community later saying, oh yeah, wow, it really has made a difference. That's what people hear, and that's what people gravitate towards, and that's what people want to have for themselves. And so they'll seek you out. The link Tony, are you requesting the link to the piece paper project? I would type in piece paper project, and I'm sure you will get the information there. Piece, P-E-A-C-E, paper project. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Would anyone have any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tony, for putting that in. Oh, thank you, Dave. I appreciate you for your kind words. Um, I know this pandemic has just been difficult for so many of us. We've literally had to kind of keep our doors closed, but when we opened, we were able to do so much in just a short period of time. And I say that just to say that even when we have downtime, we can use that time um, to think about, to practice, to try out. When we really can't have others in our space, these are some things we can kind of toy with on our own, so that when the doors are able to open, we are now able to bring them to the light and share them with others. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Deanna and Tony. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we have, oh, okay, Tony has asked, what has been your most favorite or rewarding moment? They all have been. It's it's just difficult to say because some of these projects were done years within, within 10 years. It's just been a variety of projects, a variety of groups, variety of ages, communities. Um, I just enjoy them all. And whether we're working downtown Chicago with the city of Chicago and doing open art there, or we're in a local public school community or a church, each one is so unique because their interests are different and the dynamics are a little different. But the one thing that stays the same is that we try to provide the quality and the learning component. Art education is what we're really about. And within that learning component, they find that there are a lot of nuggets of what they're doing that once we're gone, they can continue to do that, run with it, and really use it in a way that is most beneficial to them. Okay, well, again, thank you all so much for being here today. This is my first time and doing this type of a presentation, but I so appreciate each one of you for your time, your attention, and for your interest. And if there's any way that we could be of help to you, information is here on the slide. Please give a call. And if no one's answering, please leave a message. And of course, email works really well with me. And I'll be happy to help out in any way I can.